Zara pressed her scaled palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's window, watching the stars drift by in silence. The research vessel Concordia hummed around her with the familiar sounds of life support systems and distant conversations. She had been aboard for 8 months now, part of the joint Human-Kytherian Scientific Exchange Program. In all that time, she had learned much about human customs, but some things still puzzled her greatly. The humans were strange creatures. They celebrated everything. When Dr. Martinez successfully synthesized a new compound last week, they had gathered in the mess hall with something called cake. When Engineer Thompson fixed the problematic gravity generator, they all clapped their hands together in unison. When Communications Officer Chun received a message from her family on Earth, tears leaked from her eyes, but she smiled. Zara's people, the Kytherians, were different. They were born, they learned, they contributed to society, they died. There were no celebrations, no marking of personal achievements, no special recognition of individual existence. It was efficient. It was logical. It was the way things had always been. Lost in thought again. The voice belonged to Dr. Sarah Coleman, the lead xenobiologist and Zara's assigned human partner for the exchange program. Sarah was small by human standards, with hair the color of autumn leaves and eyes that seemed to hold perpetual curiosity. She approached the window with 2 steaming cups in her hands. "I was observing the stellar drift patterns," Zara replied, accepting the offered cup. The warm liquid inside was something humans called hot chocolate, and despite its strange sweetness, she had grown fond of it. Sarah settled beside her on the bench, her legs dangling slightly since she was shorter than the furniture designed for mixed-species use. "You know, you've been doing a lot of observing lately. Not just stars. Us." It was true. Zara found human behavior endlessly fascinating and bewildering in equal measure. Your species exhibits curious social patterns that differ significantly from Kytherian norms, such as— Sarah sipped her drink, genuine interest in her voice. Zara considered how to explain. "You assign emotional significance to arbitrary dates and events. You gather to consume specially prepared food for reasons that serve no obvious survival purpose. You exchange objects with no practical value simply because they represent something called sentiment." Sarah laughed, a sound like musical notes that Zara had learned indicated amusement rather than mockery. "When you put it like that, I guess we do sound pretty weird. But those arbitrary dates and silly traditions are important to us. They help us feel connected, valued, remembered." "Remembered for what purpose?" "Well," Sarah paused, swirling the liquid in her cup. "Take birthdays, for example. Once a year, on the day you were born, everyone who cares about you makes sure you know they're glad you exist. They give you gifts, sing songs, make your favorite food. It's like the whole universe is saying we're happy you're here." Zara's scaled brow ridges drew together in confusion. "Birthdays?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Wait, do Kytherians not celebrate birthdays?" "We do not have this concept. Birth occurs, life begins, purpose is assigned. There is no need for celebration." For a moment, Sarah said nothing. She studied Zara's face with an expression the Kytherian had learned to recognize as compassion mixed with determination. Finally, Sarah asked, "When were you born, Zara?" "Stellar date, April 15th, 2387 according to your calendar system." Sarah's eyes lit up with an excitement that made Zara's spinal frills tingle with curiosity. "That's next week. Next Thursday." "Yes, I will have existed for precisely 24 Earth years at that point." "Have you ever had anyone acknowledge that day? Ever had anyone tell you they were glad you were born?" The question struck Zara as odd. Why would they? Birth is a biological function. Acknowledging it serves no purpose. Sarah stood up abruptly, nearly spilling her drink. "Oh, we're fixing this. We're absolutely fixing this." "Fixing what?" "There is nothing broken." But Sarah was already walking away, muttering under her breath about decorations and cake recipes and something called a surprise party. Zara called after her, but the human had disappeared around the corner with purposeful strides. Over the next 3 days, Zara noticed strange behavior from the human crew members. They would stop talking when she approached, share meaningful looks with each other, and several times she caught them whispering urgently in small groups. Dr. Martinez asked her seemingly random questions about her food preferences. Engineer Thompson inquired about her favorite colors. Even Captain Rodriguez, normally focused entirely on ship operations, asked her what kind of music she enjoyed. Zara found their behavior puzzling, but not concerning. Humans often acted in ways that seemed illogical until their purpose became clear. She continued her research on comparative biochemistry, attended the daily briefings, and maintained her detailed observations of human social patterns. On Wednesday evening, communications officer Chun approached her in the laboratory where she was analyzing protein structures. Zara, could you help me with something tomorrow? I need to recalibrate the long-range sensors, and it would be really helpful to have someone with your technical background. Certainly. What time would be convenient? How about around 1,400 hours? Meet me in conference room 2. Zara agreed, though she found it odd that sensor calibration would require the use of a conference room rather than the communications bay. But humans often conducted business in unexpected locations. Thursday arrived with the usual ship routine. Zara completed her morning research, attended the science briefing, and shared the midday meal with Dr. Santos from the physics department. As the time approached for her appointment with Chun, she made her way through the ship's corridors toward conference room 2. The corridor was unusually quiet. Most of the human crew seemed to be elsewhere, which was strange for the middle of a standard work shift. Zara pressed the access panel for conference room 2, and the doors slid open. Surprise! The shout came from a dozen human voices simultaneously. Zara's spinal frills flared in alarm, her scaled skin shifting to a protective darker hue as her fight-or-flight responses activated. But as her eyes adjusted to the dimmed lighting, she realized there was no threat. The conference room had been completely transformed. Colorful strips of material hung from the ceiling in festive loops. The table was covered with a bright cloth and laden with food that filled the air with delicious aromas. In the center sat the largest cake Zara had ever seen, white with blue decorations that matched her natural scale coloration. Tiny flames flickered atop cylindrical objects embedded in the cake's surface. Every human aboard the ship stood around the table, their faces beaming with the expression Zara had learned indicated happiness and excitement. Sarah stepped forward, her autumn-colored hair adorned with a small pointed hat. "Happy birthday, Zara." The words meant nothing and everything simultaneously. Zara stood frozen in the doorway, her neural processors trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Her scales gradually shifted back to their normal green-blue hue as her alarm subsided, replaced by overwhelming confusion. "I do not understand," she said quietly. Sarah's smile softened. "This is your birthday party, remember? Today is the day you were born 24 years ago. We wanted to celebrate that, celebrate you." "But why?" Zara's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I have done nothing special today. I have achieved no significant accomplishment. I have contributed nothing extraordinary to the mission." Dr. Martinez stepped forward, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "You don't have to do anything special to deserve a birthday party, Zara. You just have to exist. Your existence matters to us," added Engineer Thompson. "You've made our lives better just by being here, by sharing your knowledge and your perspective." Captain Rodriguez nodded. "You've taught us as much about ourselves as we've taught you about humanity. That's worth celebrating." Zara looked around the room at all the faces watching her with warmth and expectation. She had studied human expressions for months, but the combination of joy, affection, and anticipation she saw now was unlike anything in her research notes. "The flames on the food preparation?" she asked, gesturing toward the cake. "Those are candles," Chin explained. "You make a wish and blow them out. It's supposed to make the wish come true." "A wish. Something you want, something you hope for," Sarah said gently. "Close your eyes, think of something you'd like to have happen, then blow out the candles." Zara approached the table slowly, studying the flickering flames. Around her, the humans began singing in harmonized voices, words about happiness and birthdays and her name. The melody was simple but beautiful, and something warm and unfamiliar began growing in her chest. When the song ended, she stood before the cake with its dancing flames, acutely aware of 12 pairs of eyes watching her with patient kindness. She had never made a wish before. Kytherians planned and calculated and executed logical steps toward desired outcomes. Wishing seemed counterproductive, but as she looked around at these humans who had spent time and effort to create this moment for her, who had somehow decided her existence was worth acknowledging, she found herself closing her eyes. She wished to understand what it felt like to matter to someone. Then, she leaned forward and blew out all 24 candles in one breath. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Someone activated the room's normal lighting, and Zara blinked as the humans surged forward to pat her back, offer congratulations, and begin cutting the cake into portions. Dr. Santos handed her a plate with a generous slice of cake, its blue frosting decorated with delicate silver designs. How does it feel to be 24? Zara considered the question seriously. I feel precisely as I did this morning. The passage of time does not alter my fundamental cellular structure or cognitive capacity. The humans laughed, but it was warm laughter that included her rather than excluding her. Sarah appeared at her elbow with a collection of wrapped objects. Presents, she explained. We all got you something. Zara stared at the packages. For what purpose? No purpose except that we wanted to. That's what you do for someone's birthday. The first package contained a small device that projected three-dimensional images of stellar formations. Dr. Martinez had programmed it with the view from Kytheria's primary observatory, showing the night sky exactly as it appeared from her homeworld. The second was a book of human poetry compiled by Communications Officer Chun, with handwritten notes explaining the cultural context of each piece. The third was a small sculpture Engineer Thompson had crafted in the machine shop, depicting two figures of different species standing together under twin stars. Each gift came with explanations, stories, personal connections. The humans had thought about her specifically, considered what might bring her joy or interest, and acted on those thoughts. It was inefficient and illogical and completely wonderful. As the evening progressed, the humans shared stories about their own birthdays, childhood memories of cake, and presents, and feeling special for one day out of the year. They asked Zara about Kytherian coming-of-age rituals, listened intently to her explanations of how her people marked life transitions through practical assessments and role assignments. It sounds very organized, Sarah said diplomatically. It is efficient, Zara agreed. Then, quietly, she added, but no one ever made me a cake. The party continued late into the night shift. When it finally ended and the humans began cleaning up, each person made a point of wishing Zara happy birthday, one more time before leaving. Soon only Sarah remained, packing away the leftover decorations. Sarah, Zara said as her friend folded the colorful streamers. I have a question. What's that? When is your birthday? Sarah smiled. June 15th. What? Zara filed the date away carefully in her memory. No particular reason. As they walked back to their respective quarters, Zara carried her gifts and a container of leftover cake. In her quarters, she arranged the presents carefully on her desk and sat for a long time looking at them. Tomorrow, she would return to her research and her observations of human behavior. But tonight, for the first time in her life, she felt like someone who mattered not for what she could contribute or how she could serve, but simply for who she was. She had never heard of birthdays before today. Now she understood why humans celebrated them. Everyone deserved to feel, at least once a year, like the universe was glad they existed. And in 3 months, she would make sure Sarah felt exactly the same way. The weeks following her birthday party brought changes to Zara that she hadn't expected. She found herself paying attention to different things, noticing details about the humans around her that she had previously cataloged as irrelevant data. The way Dr. Martinez hummed while working late in the lab. How Engineer Thompson always carried a small photograph of his daughter in his toolkit. The careful way communications officer Chen arranged her few personal belongings in her quarters. These observations felt different from her previous scientific study of human behavior. Before, she had been documenting patterns for her research reports. Now, she was learning about individuals because she genuinely cared about their well-being. It was a new experience, caring about others beyond their functional utility. Sarah had been right about birthdays serving a purpose. Zara now understood that the celebration had changed something fundamental in how she related to the crew. They no longer seemed like research subjects or colleagues. They had become something Kytherians didn't have a proper word for, though humans call them friends. 3 weeks after her birthday, Zara made her first attempt at human-style gift-giving. Dr. Martinez had been struggling with a particularly complex protein synthesis that required precise temperature control. Zara had observed him running the same calculations repeatedly, growing more frustrated each time the results fell short of his requirements. Her Kytherian education included advanced thermodynamics, and she could see the solution to his problem clearly. In the past, she would have simply provided the answer if asked. But now she found herself wanting to help in a way that would make Dr. Martinez feel valued, not just informed. She spent her off-duty hours creating a detailed holographic model that showed exactly how to modify the synthesis chamber for optimal results. But instead of presenting it as technical data, she programmed it as an interactive puzzle that would let Dr. Martinez discover the solution himself. She added visual elements she thought he might enjoy, colorful representations of molecular bonds that danced and sang when properly aligned. When she presented it to him the next morning, his face transformed with delight. "Zara, this is incredible. How did you know I love solving puzzles?" "I observed that you often work on what you call crossword puzzles during your rest periods," she replied. "I hypothesized that you might enjoy a three-dimensional variant related to your research." Dr. Martinez spent the rest of the morning playing with the holographic model, laughing with genuine joy each time he discovered a new aspect of the solution. When he finally solved the synthesis problem, he immediately sought out Zara to thank her again. "This wasn't just helpful," he told her. "It was thoughtful. You made learning fun." Zara filed away the word thoughtful for future consideration. It seemed to describe something important about human social interaction that she was beginning to understand. Her next experiment in human-style kindness involved Engineer Thompson. She had noticed that he often spoke about his daughter Emma, who was 8 years old and lived with his ex-wife on Mars colony. Thompson's work shift ended at 1800 hours, but the communication window to Mars colony opened at 1900 hours due to orbital mechanics. This left him with an hour each evening when he could do nothing but wait and worry about missing the chance to talk to his child. Zara approached the ship's communication schedule problem like an engineering puzzle. After studying the relay patterns and signal routing, she developed a way to compress and store outgoing video messages, then transmit them through a series of automated relay buoys that would deliver them during optimal windows. This would allow Thompson to record messages for Emma anytime and know they would reach her when she was available to receive them. She presented the solution to him as a minor optimization to communication efficiency, but Thompson's response was far from minor. "You did this for me?" His eyes filled with water, which Zara had learned indicated strong emotion in humans. "Do you know how many nights I've paced these corridors worrying I'd miss talking to Emma? I calculated the probability at roughly 23% per week based on her duty schedules and optimal communication windows." Thompson laughed and wiped his eyes. "You're amazing, Zara. Emma is going to love hearing from me every day now." That evening, Zara heard Thompson's voice through the communication bay, reading his daughter a bedtime story. The joy in his voice was unmistakable. She was beginning to understand that helping others feel happy created a curious warm sensation in her own chest. Kytherians didn't have a term for this feeling, but humans called it satisfaction. She found she enjoyed it immensely. As Sarah's birthday approached, Zara threw herself into planning with an intensity that surprised even her. She had been observing and learning about gift-giving and party planning for months now, and she was determined to give Sarah an experience as meaningful as the one the humans had created for her. The challenge was that Zara had no experience with surprises, decorations, or party games. Everything she knew about human celebrations came from careful observation and questioning, but creating something from that knowledge felt overwhelming. She started by consulting the ship's database on human birthday traditions, but the information was mostly statistical data about gift purchasing patterns and caloric content of various celebratory foods. Not helpful for understanding what would make Sarah feel special. So she began interviewing the other crew members, carefully framing her questions as academic curiosity about human customs. Dr. Martinez, she said one morning while they worked side by side in the lab, what elements of a birthday celebration are most significant from an emotional perspective? Dr. Martinez looked up from his specimen slides. Well, I think it's different for everyone. Some people love surprises, others prefer to know what's happening. Some want big parties with lots of people, others prefer intimate gatherings with close friends. How does one determine which preference applies to a specific individual? You pay attention to what makes them happy in general. Sarah, for example, loves learning new things. She gets excited about discovering connections between different ideas, and she's always trying to understand how things work. Zara made careful notes. What about physical objects? How does one select appropriate gifts? The best gifts show that you understand who someone is and what they care about. It's not about how much you spend, it's about how much thought you put into it. From Engineer Thompson, she learned about the importance of decorations and atmosphere. From Communications Officer Chun, she discovered that music could transform a simple gathering into a memorable event. From Captain Rodriguez, she gained insight into the logistics of coordinating a surprise. But the most important conversation came from an unexpected source. Dr. Santos, the quiet physicist who rarely participated in social events, found Zara in the observation lounge one evening as she sat staring at the stars and making party planning notes. Having trouble with something? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. Zara hesitated. She had been trying to keep her planning secret, but her frustration was becoming obvious. I am attempting to organize a birthday celebration for Dr. Coleman, but I lack experience with human social customs. I am concerned I will fail to create an adequate experience. Dr. Santos smiled. You know, I used to have the same worry. I'm not very good at parties or social things. But I learned something important from watching Sarah over these past months. What did you learn? That the most meaningful celebrations aren't about perfect execution or expensive gifts. They're about showing someone that they matter to you. Sarah matters to all of us, but especially to you. Whatever you plan, if it comes from genuine care, it will be perfect. His words echoed something Zara had been feeling, but couldn't quite articulate. She did care about Sarah, more than she had ever cared about anyone outside her immediate family unit on Kytheria. Sarah had been patient with her questions, kind about her cultural misunderstandings, and genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. The humans had given Zara her first birthday party because they wanted her to feel valued. Now, she wanted to give Sarah something equally meaningful. The next morning, Zara made a decision that would have shocked her 3 months earlier. Instead of trying to plan the perfect human party, she would create something uniquely meaningful to Sarah specifically. Something that showed she understood what made Sarah special. She began by thinking about all the conversations they had shared, all the moments when Sarah's eyes had lit up with curiosity or delight. Sarah loved solving mysteries and understanding how different pieces fit together. She was fascinated by the connections between species, the ways that life found similar solutions to different challenges across the galaxy. Zara had an idea. Over the next week, she worked in secret, using her off-duty hours and calling in favors from the crew members who were now eager to help with anything that would make their colleague happy. Her project was ambitious and complex, requiring skills from multiple disciplines. But as the pieces came together, Zara felt something she had never experienced before. Not just satisfaction from solving a technical challenge, but genuine excitement about giving something special to someone she cared about. 3 days before Sarah's birthday, Zara realized she had learned something profound about human nature. The party her crew had thrown for her hadn't just been about following tradition or making her feel included. It had been about love. The concept of love was still foreign to Kytherian understanding. Her people formed pair bonds for reproduction and child-rearing, and they felt attachment to family units. But the broader human concept of love that extended to friends and chosen family was new to her. Yet she could not deny that what she felt for Sarah and the others was precisely that. Love. Affection beyond utility. Care that existed for its own sake. And soon, she would have her first opportunity to express that feeling in the distinctly human tradition of throwing someone a birthday party. As she put the finishing touches on her surprise, Zara found herself looking forward to Sarah's reaction with an anticipation that made her scales shimmer with excitement. She had learned that birthdays weren't really about the day you were born. They were about celebrating the impact your existence had on the people around you. Sarah had changed Zara's understanding of what it meant to be alive, to matter, to belong. Now it was time to show her friend exactly how much that meant. The best part was that Sarah had no idea what was coming. Sarah's birthday was 2 days away, and Zara had never been more nervous in her life. Her carefully planned surprise was ready, hidden in Storage Bay 7, where Sarah never had reason to go. The crew was coordinated and excited to help. Everything was prepared according to her detailed timeline and contingency protocols. But Zara kept questioning every decision she had made. What if Sarah didn't like surprises as much as Zara assumed? What if the gift was too personal or not personal enough? What if the food was wrong, or the decorations seemed childish, or the music was too loud, or too quiet, or completely inappropriate? Human social customs suddenly seemed impossibly complex. "You're overthinking this," Dr. Martinez told her as they worked together in the lab on Tuesday morning. "I can literally see you calculating probabilities. Your scales are shifting colors every 30 seconds. Zara looked down at herself, surprised to notice her scales had indeed been cycling through various hues of blue and green, a Kytherian stress response she usually controlled better. "I am concerned about executing the celebration adequately. Sarah is going to love whatever you've planned," Dr. Martinez assured her. "You know why? Because it's coming from you. She cares about you, Zara. That makes anything you do meaningful to her." Despite his reassurances, Zara spent the rest of Tuesday reviewing her plans obsessively. She had studied hours of footage from human birthday parties in the ship's entertainment database. She had researched Sarah's personal preferences, her favorite foods, her musical tastes, her color preferences. She had calculated optimal timing for maximum surprise impact while ensuring Sarah wouldn't be too tired or distracted to enjoy herself. But none of that preparation addressed her deeper worry. What if she had misunderstood something fundamental about human emotion? What if her attempt to express care and affection came across as strange or inappropriate? Kytherians showed affection through practical gestures, useful gifts, logical demonstrations of commitment. Human love seemed to involve much more abstract concepts like thoughtfulness, sentimentality, and emotional symbolism. Wednesday morning brought a new challenge. Sarah seemed unusually observant, commenting on small details Zara hoped she hadn't noticed. "The crew seems excited about something," Sarah mentioned during their morning coffee ritual in the observation lounge. Dr. Martinez was humming yesterday. Thompson was grinning at his workstation, and even Captain Rodriguez seems unusually cheerful. Zara's scales flickered toward purple before she controlled them. Perhaps they are pleased about the successful completion of this week's research objectives. Sarah gave her a look that suggested she wasn't entirely convinced, but she didn't press the issue. "Speaking of research, I've been thinking about your birthday party. It made me realize how little we know about Kytherian celebration customs. Do your people mark any special occasions?" "We acknowledge practical milestones," Zara replied carefully. "Educational achievements, role assignments, reproductive bonding ceremonies, productivity benchmarks. But nothing just for fun? No holidays or festivals or days when you just celebrate being alive. Zara considered the question seriously. We view such activities as inefficient use of resources. Time spent in celebration could be devoted to productive endeavors. Sarah was quiet for a moment, swirling the coffee in her cup. That seems lonely. The comment surprised Zara. How can it be lonely? We are surrounded by other members of our society, all working toward common goals. But do you ever feel like an individual? Like someone special and unique, not just another productive member of society? It was a profound question that Zara had never considered before her exposure to human culture. On Kytheria, individual identity was largely defined by role and function. She was Zara of the science caste, specializing in biochemistry, assigned to off-world research duties. Her personal preferences, feelings, and experiences were secondary to her contribution to society. I am beginning to understand the concept of individual worth, she admitted. Your celebration taught me that existence itself can have value beyond productivity. Sarah's smile was warm and slightly sad. I'm glad we could show you that. Everyone deserves to feel special sometimes. That afternoon, Zara made her final preparations with help from the crew. Communications Officer Chun had agreed to distract Sarah during the setup period by requesting assistance with what she called routine maintenance on the external sensor array. Engineer Thompson had modified the lighting systems in Conference Room 2 to create the ambience Zara wanted. Dr. Martinez had spent hours helping her prepare the special meal she had planned. The gift was the part Zara was most nervous about. It wasn't a simple object like the presents she had received. It was something much more complex and personal, something that represented weeks of work and careful thought. She had created a holographic family tree. Not a traditional human family tree showing biological relationships, but something entirely new, a map of meaningful connections between different species across the galaxy. It started with Sarah at the center, then branched out to show every sentient species she had studied, worked with, or helped during her career. Each branch contained detailed information about the species, their unique characteristics, and the specific ways Sarah had contributed to understanding or helping them. The Kytherian branch was the largest and most detailed, showing not just their biological and cultural information, but also how Sarah's friendship had changed Zara's understanding of her own species' potential for growth and connection. It was a gift that said, "Your life has meaning across the galaxy. You have touched the existence of beings you may never meet again, and they are better for having known you." Zara hoped it would convey what she couldn't adequately express in words. At 1800 hours on Wednesday evening, Chen's voice crackled over the ship's communication system. "Dr. Coleman to Communications Bay for sensor array consultation, please." Zara's scales rippled with nervous energy as she watched Sarah leave the science lab, completely unaware that her birthday celebration would begin in exactly 18 hours. The crew moved into action with military precision. They had practiced the setup procedure twice during Sarah's sleep periods to ensure smooth execution. By 1830 hours, Conference Room 2 was completely transformed. But this time, the decorations were different from Zara's birthday party. Instead of colorful streamers, the room was decorated with soft, warm lighting and displays showing beautiful images from dozens of different worlds. Each table setting included small artifacts representing different species Sarah had worked with during her career. The cake was designed to look like a miniature galaxy, with tiny edible stars scattered across deep blue frosting. In the center of it all, Zara's holographic projector waited to display her gift. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Santos, who had helped with the technical setup. "She's going to love this." Zara nodded, but her nervousness was reaching critical levels. What if Sarah didn't understand the gift? What if she found it overwhelming or too sentimental? What if Zara had misread everything about human emotional expression? "Zara," Captain Rodriguez said quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take a deep breath. You've created something amazing here. Trust yourself. The next 18 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Zara barely slept, running through potential scenarios and backup plans. She reviewed her speech 17 times, adjusting the words to better convey her intentions. She checked and rechecked the holographic display system to ensure it would function perfectly. Thursday morning arrived with routine duty shifts, but nothing felt routine to Zara. Every conversation with Sarah felt loaded with significance. Every smile or laugh from her friend made Zara more determined to give her a perfect birthday experience. At 1,200 hours, Dr. Martinez casually mentioned to Sarah that he needed her input on a theoretical framework he was developing, and could she meet him in conference room 2 at 1,400 hours? Sarah agreed without suspicion, focused as always on helping her colleagues with their work. At 1,359 hours, Zara stood outside conference room 2 with 11 humans, all of them grinning with excitement and anticipation. Her scales were shimmering with nervous energy, but underneath the anxiety was something stronger. Genuine love for the woman who had taught her that birthdays were about celebrating the joy of someone's existence. "Ready?" whispered Captain Rodriguez. Zara took a deep breath and nodded. They could hear Sarah's footsteps approaching in the corridor outside. Sarah pressed the access panel, and the door slid open. Surprise! For a moment, Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. Then, her face transformed with such pure joy that Zara felt her chest fill with warmth. "Oh my goodness! You guys!" Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as she took in the transformed room, the galaxy cake, the thoughtful decorations representing her life's work. "This is incredible!" The crew surged forward to hug her and wish her happy birthday, but Zara hung back slightly, watching Sarah's face for every reaction. When Sarah's eyes found her across the room, her friend's smile became even brighter. "Zara," Sarah called out, pushing through the crowd to reach her. "Did you organize this?" "I had assistance from the crew," Zara replied, her scales flickering between blue and silver with emotion. "But yes, I planned it." Sarah threw her arms around Zara in a fierce hug that surprised them both. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is the most thoughtful thing anyone has ever done for me." The warmth in Zara's chest expanded until she thought it might lift her off the ground. She was beginning to understand why humans celebrated birthdays. It wasn't really about the person having the birthday at all. It was about the love that surrounded them, made visible for one perfect day. The party was in full swing when Zara finally gathered the courage to present her gift. Sarah had already received presents from the other crew members: a rare earth mineral specimen from Dr. Martinez, a hand-carved wooden puzzle box from Engineer Thompson, a collection of poetry from 12 different worlds compiled by Communications Officer Chen. Each gift had delighted her, but Zara could see that Sarah was curious about what she might have prepared. "I have something for you as well," Zara said, her voice carefully controlled despite her racing pulse. "But it requires explanation." "I love explanations," Sarah replied, settling into a chair with her characteristic enthusiasm for learning new things. Zara activated the holographic projector, and the room filled with a three-dimensional star map. But instead of showing stellar formations, this map displayed something far more personal and meaningful. "This is your impact across the galaxy," Zara began, highlighting the central point where Sarah's image appeared surrounded by flowing lines of light. "Each connection represents a species you have studied, understood, or helped during your career." Sarah's eyes widened as the display expanded, showing dozens of alien species branching out from her central position. Each branch pulsed with different colors and contained detailed information about the civilizations Sarah had encountered. "Here," Zara said, highlighting a golden strand, "is your work with the Delphin water farmers. Your research into their irrigation methods helped them increase crop yields by 40% and prevented a famine that would have affected millions." She moved to another branch. "Your study of Centauran pack hunting behavior led to breakthrough treatments for social anxiety disorders in 3 different species, including humans. Sarah leaned forward, fascinated, as Zara continued highlighting connection after connection. The hologram showed not just Sarah's direct research contributions, but the ripple effects of her work across space and time. Students she had taught who went on to make their own discoveries. Collaborations that sparked innovations. Simple acts of kindness that had changed individual lives. Zara, Sarah whispered, this is incredible. How did you compile all this information? I contacted your former colleagues, your students, the research institutions you've worked with. I also accessed public databases of scientific publications and cross-referenced your contributions. It required significant effort, but I wanted you to understand the true scope of your influence. The largest and most detailed branch was the one representing Kytheria and Zara herself. This section shows how your friendship has changed not just my understanding of human culture, but my understanding of my own people's potential for growth, Zara explained. Before meeting you, I believe Kytherians were incapable of the emotional connections I have observed in human relationships. You taught me that the capacity for friendship, for caring about others beyond their utility, exists in my species as well. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying the intricate web of connections that flowed out from her position at the center. Tears had begun flowing down her cheeks, but Zara had learned to recognize them as expressions of joy rather than distress. You did all this research just to show me how my work has affected others. Yes, but also to demonstrate a more important concept. Zara highlighted the entire display, causing all the connections to pulse in synchronization. You asked me yesterday if I ever feel like an individual, like someone special and unique. I wanted you to see that you are both individual and connected, special precisely because of how you touch the lives of others. The room was completely silent except for the gentle hum of the holographic projectors. Even the other crew members, who had been chatting and laughing moments before, stood transfixed by the beauty of what Zara had created. Every being in this galaxy exists as an individual, Zara continued, but we also exist as part of a vast network of connections and influences. Your birthday celebrates both the uniqueness of your existence and the ways you have enriched the existence of countless others. Sarah stood up and walked closer to the hologram, reaching out as if to touch the flowing lines of light. Zara, this is the most beautiful, thoughtful gift I've ever received. But more than that, it's taught me something about friendship I didn't expect. What have you learned? Sarah turned to face her, eyes bright with emotion. I spent so much time trying to teach you about human customs and celebrations. But you've shown me something my own species sometimes forgets. The best way to celebrate someone isn't just to make them feel special for a day. It's to help them understand why they matter always. The hologram continued displaying its intricate web of connections as the party resumed around them. But for Zara, the most important connection was the one directly in front of her, the friendship that had transformed both their lives. Later that evening, after the other crew members had returned to their duties and the conference room had been restored to its normal configuration, Zara and Sarah sat in the observation lounge with cups of coffee and leftover galaxy cake. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said, settling back in her chair with the comfortable ease of someone completely content. "Of course. When you were researching all those connections for the hologram, did you discover anything that surprised you about your own impact?" Zara considered the question carefully. "I was not included in the research parameters. The display was focused on your influence. But you must have learned things about yourself while you were gathering information about everyone I've worked with." It was true. During her months of research, Zara had been contacted by dozens of Sarah's former colleagues and students. Many of them had asked about her, curious about the Kytherian scientist who was so dedicated to honoring her friend's birthday. Dr. Rebecca Chun at the Martian Institute asked me to convey her respect for your research methodologies, Sarah continued with a knowing smile. Professor Williams at the Centauran Exchange wanted your contact information because he's developing a new interspecies cooperation curriculum. And somehow Commander Torres at the Deep Space Research Station heard about your holographic mapping techniques and wants to know if you'd be interested in collaborating on a project. Zara's scales shifted to a surprised silver. How do you know this? Because they all contacted me to tell me how impressed they were with you. Apparently, word has spread through the scientific community about the brilliant Kytherian researcher who spent months creating a tribute to her human friend's career. The implications of this information were staggering. While Zara had been focused on documenting Sarah's influence across the galaxy, she had inadvertently demonstrated her own unique capabilities and perspectives. Her dedication to friendship, her innovative approach to data visualization, her cross-species collaboration skills, all of these have been noticed and valued by the wider scientific community. You see, Sarah said gently, you were worried about whether you understood human customs well enough to plan a proper birthday party. But what you actually did was create something entirely new. You took the human concept of celebration and combined it with Kytherian analytical precision and your own unique perspective. The result was more meaningful than any traditional party could have been. Zara felt a familiar warm sensation in her chest, but now she understood it better. This was what humans call pride. Not the arrogant kind, but the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing you had created something good. I've been thinking about our earlier conversation, Zara said. You asked whether I feel like an individual, someone special and unique rather than just another productive member of society. And now, I'm beginning to understand that individual worth and social contribution are not mutually exclusive concepts. The hologram showed how your individual uniqueness creates value for others. Perhaps my individual perspective has similar potential. Sarah smiled. I think you're discovering what humans have known for a long time. The most valuable contributions come from people who are authentically themselves, not from people trying to fit into predetermined roles. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars drift past the observation windows. The galaxy was vast and ancient, filled with billions of individual beings living their separate lives. But connection was possible across any distance, any difference in biology or culture or understanding. Zara thought about the research offer Sarah had mentioned. For the first time since leaving Kytheria, she was considering the possibility that her future might involve more than just completing her assigned exchange program and returning home to resume her designated role. Sarah, she said eventually, when our mission aboard this vessel concludes, what will happen to our friendship? What do you want to happen? It was a distinctly human question, asking what she wanted rather than what was expected or logical or efficient. I want it to continue, Zara admitted. I want to maintain the connection we have built, even across vast distances. Then it will continue. That's how friendship works. It doesn't end just because circumstances change. As they prepared to return to their quarters, Sarah paused in the doorway of the observation lounge. Thank you, Zara. Not just for the party or the incredible gift, but for teaching me something important about my own species. We talk a lot about celebrating diversity and learning from other cultures, but you've shown me what that actually looks like in practice. You didn't just adopt human customs. You transformed them into something better. Alone in her quarters later that night, Zara reflected on the events of the day. She had succeeded in giving Sarah a memorable birthday celebration, but the experience had changed her as much as it had honored her friend. She was no longer the same Kytherian who had boarded this vessel 8 months ago, focused solely on completing her research assignment and returning home. She had discovered capabilities and desires she hadn't known she possessed. She had formed connections that transcended species barriers. Tomorrow, she would contact Professor Williams about his curriculum project. She would respond to Commander Torres regarding the holographic mapping collaboration. She would begin exploring the possibility of extending her stay in human space to pursue opportunities she couldn't have imagined before learning what it meant to celebrate someone's birthday. But tonight, she simply felt grateful for the warm sensation in her chest that told her she was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by beings who valued her not for what she could produce, but for who she had chosen to become. 6 months later, The research vessel Concordia docked at Kepler Station for its scheduled crew rotation and resupply. For most of the human crew, this was a routine stop before their next assignment. For Zara, it represented a crossroads that would determine the rest of her life. Her original exchange program was scheduled to end here. A Kytherian transport vessel waited in the station's docking bay, ready to carry her back to her homeworld, where she would resume her designated role in the science cast. Her research data had been transmitted months ago to favorable reviews. Her mission was complete, but completing the mission and fulfilling her potential were no longer the same thing. The offer from the Galactic Institute is still open, Sarah reminded her, as they shared their final breakfast together in the Concordia's mess hall. Professor Williams says they've never seen cross-species collaboration techniques like yours. They want to build an entire program around your approach. Zara prodded her breakfast thoughtfully. The decision should have been simple. Kytherians followed predetermined paths. They completed assignments and returned home. They did not extend stays in alien space to pursue opportunities that had no clear endpoint. But the being who had boarded this vessel 14 months ago wouldn't have known how to plan a birthday party, either. The Kytherian Council expects my return, she said finally. Deviation from approved programs requires formal justification and administrative review. So provide justification, Dr. Martinez suggested from across the table. You've made discoveries here that could benefit your people as well as the rest of the galaxy. That's got to count for something. It was true that her research had exceeded all expectations. Her comparative studies of human and Kytherian biochemistry had yielded insights that could revolutionize medicine for both species. Her work on interspecies communication protocols had already been adopted by 3 different diplomatic corps. Her holographic mapping techniques were being requested by research institutions across known space. But, more importantly, she had discovered something her people didn't know existed: the possibility of friendship across species barriers. I have been composing a message to the Council, Zara admitted. But I am uncertain how to explain concepts they may not understand. Such as, Sarah prompted gently. How do I tell them I have learned to care about beings beyond their utility to me? How do I explain that I want to continue working with humans not because it serves Kytherian interests, but because it brings me satisfaction? How do I justify choosing my own path when my society values conformity to assigned roles? Engineer Thompson looked up from his coffee. You tell them the truth. You tell them that diversity makes everyone stronger, and that you can serve your people better by bringing back new perspectives and capabilities. And if they don't accept that justification, the question hung in the air for a moment. Everyone at the table understood the implications. If the Kytherian Council rejected her request to extend her stay, she would face a choice between duty to her species and following her own path. Either choice would involve significant sacrifice. Then, you'll have to decide what's more important to you, Captain Rodriguez said quietly. Following the rules, or following your conscience. After breakfast, Zara made her way to the communications center to transmit her formal request to the Kytherian Council. She had spent weeks crafting the message, balancing honesty about her personal growth with practical arguments for the benefits to her people. The response came 3 hours later. Science Cast member Zura, 7842. Your request to extend off-world assignment beyond approved parameters is denied. Return transport departs Kepler Station at 2,200 hours today. Failure to report will result in loss of citizenship status and exile from Kytheria. Council Directive 847 Alpha. End transmission. Asterisk Sarah found her in the observation lounge an hour later, staring out at the stars with unsealed emotion written across her face. Bad news, Sarah asked, settling beside her with 2 cups of hot chocolate. The Council has denied my request. I am ordered to return immediately or face permanent exile from my homeworld. I am sorry, Zara. That must be incredibly difficult to hear. Zara accepted the warm cup gratefully, wrapping her scaled fingers around it for comfort. I knew it was a possibility. Kytherians do not typically deviate from assigned paths. What are you going to do? It was the question Zara had been avoiding all day. The rational choice was clear: return to Kytheria, resume her designated role, and cherish the memories of her time among humans as a unique but concluded experience. But rationality was no longer her only consideration. Sarah, may I ask you something about human decision-making? Of course. How do humans choose between duty and desire when they conflict? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. I think it depends on what kind of person you want to be and what kind of life you want to live. Some people prioritize duty because they find meaning in serving something larger than themselves. Others prioritize personal fulfillment because they believe they can contribute more when they're following their authentic path. What would you choose in my situation? I can't answer that for you, Zara, but I can tell you what I see when I look at you. Sarah turned to face her fully. I see someone who has grown beyond the limitations her society placed on her. I see someone who has discovered she's capable of connection, innovation, and leadership in ways her people haven't imagined. I see someone who could change how two civilizations understand each other. Zara felt her scales shift to a deep, contemplative blue. And if I choose to stay, if I accept exile from everything I've ever known, then you'll build something new. You won't be the first being to find family among a different species, and you won't be the last. The word family resonated through Zara's consciousness. It was an accurate description of what the crew of the Concordia had become to her. Not just colleagues or friends, but beings she loved and who loved her in return. Beings who celebrated her existence, not for what she could produce, but for who she was. I have made my decision, Zara said finally. At 2,100 hours, 1 hour before the Kytherian transport was scheduled to depart, Zara stood in the docking bay with her 2 travel cases and a heart full of determination. But she wasn't alone. The entire crew of the Concordia had come to see her off, their faces a mixture of sadness at her departure and respect for her choice. They had become her chosen family, and saying goodbye was more difficult than she had anticipated. Keep in touch, Dr. Martinez said, embracing her warmly. The medical community needs your insights. Make sure you visit us, added Engineer Thompson. Emma wants to meet the alien who helped her dad call home every night. Communications Officer Chun handed her a small device. This will let you contact us anytime, anywhere in the galaxy, no matter how far you travel. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward with an official-looking document. Dr. Zura, by the authority vested in me by the Galactic Federation, I hereby offer you provisional citizenship and research status pending your application for permanent residency. Welcome to the wider galaxy. Zara stared at the citizenship papers, her scales cycling through colors of surprise, gratitude, and overwhelming emotion. She had expected to face exile alone, but instead she was being offered a new home among beings who valued her contributions and cared about her well-being. I don't know how to thank you, she managed. Sarah stepped forward with a wrap package. Consider this a very late birthday present. Open it when you get to your new assignment. The Kytherian transport departed at 2,200 hours exactly, its departure logs noting the absence of science cast members 7842, who had failed to report for mandated return. At 2,201 hours, Dr. Zara of the Galactic Institute for Cross-Species Cooperation walked onto her new ship, the research vessel Unity, where she would spend the next year studying communication protocols between 17 different civilizations. Her quarters were smaller than those on the Concordia, but they came with something she had never expected to find: a small celebration waiting for her. The research team had prepared a welcome party complete with cake, decorations, and gifts representing each species they would be studying together. We heard you invented a new kind of birthday celebration, explained Dr. Kim, the team leader, as they gathered around a table loaded with delicious food. We thought you might like to help us invent some new welcome traditions. As Zara looked around the table at her new colleagues, humans, Andromedans, Centaurans, and 3 other species she had never worked with before, she felt the familiar warm sensation in her chest that meant she was exactly where she belonged. Later that night, Alone in her quarters, she opened Sarah's gift. Inside was a small holographic projector and a note. Zara, this contains recordings of every birthday celebration humanity has ever documented, going back thousands of years. Study them, learn from them, and then create something entirely new. Show the galaxy what celebration looks like when it comes from someone who truly understands the value of connection. Happy birthday, whenever you choose to celebrate it. Love, Sarah. Zara activated the projector and watched images of birthday parties spanning millennia of human history. Children blowing out candles, families gathering around tables, friends singing songs of celebration and joy. But she was also thinking about the future, about the birthday parties she would organize for her new colleagues, about teaching other species the art of celebrating individual existence, about the day, perhaps years from now, when the first Kytherian would attend a birthday party and discover what it meant to be valued for simply being alive. She had never heard of birthdays until a human threw one just for her. Now she understood that birthdays were just the beginning, the first step in learning that every being in the galaxy deserved to know they mattered. Tomorrow, she would begin her new work. She would study how different species formed connections, celebrated achievements, and showed care for one another. She would develop new protocols for cross-cultural understanding and cooperation. But tonight, she simply felt grateful for the journey that had brought her here. From a Kytherian science station to a research vessel filled with humans, to a new ship carrying representatives of multiple civilizations, each step had expanded her understanding of what it meant to be alive in a universe full of friends she hadn't met yet. She had learned that family wasn't just about shared biology or assigned social roles. Family was about choosing to care for each other, to celebrate each other's existence, to support each other's growth. And somewhere among the stars, her human friends were continuing their own journeys, carrying with them the knowledge that they had changed a Kytherian's life forever by teaching her that everyone deserved to have their birthday celebrated with cake and candles and love. The galaxy was vast and full of possibilities, but it was also full of opportunities for connection. Zara intended to spend the rest of her life helping others discover that truth, one birthday party at a time.